During 4 desperate days searching for their missing son in the Arizona wilderness, the Harper family felt hope slipping through their fingers. But on the 4th night, when exhaustion and fear nearly broke them, a strange young lion appeared at their back door and tapped 3 times like a person asking to come in. No one understood its purpose until it returned with Evan's red scarf in its mouth. When the Harpers chose to follow the creature into the dark woods, they never imagined it would lead them to a secret buried for generations. The 4th night after Evan Harper vanished, the house felt colder than the winter air rolling down from the San Francisco peaks. Laura Harper stood in the dim kitchen, her hands wrapped around a mug of untouched coffee, listening to the quiet that had become unbearable. Every sound, the creak of the floorboards, the wind brushing against the siding, the distant hum of a passing truck, felt like a cruel reminder that the house was missing its smallest heartbeat. Daniel sat at the table, still wearing the boots he had searched in all day, staring at nothing. Neither had slept more than an hour since the search teams began scaling back. The sheriff's words from earlier kept playing in Laura's head. "We're doing everything we can, but after 3 days, the odds change." She hated that sentence more than any medical bill, mortgage notice, or insurance letter she'd ever seen in her life. Nothing felt heavier than the thought of losing a child. It was nearly midnight when the tapping began. At first, Laura thought it was a branch brushing against the house. But the sound came again, 3 sharp knocks, evenly spaced, almost deliberate. She froze. Daniel slowly lifted his head, his exhausted eyes narrowing as the tapping came a 3rd time. They both stood at once. Laura reached for the living room light, and as the lamp flicked on, she felt her breath catch in her chest. A lion stood outside their sliding glass door. Not a mountain lion. No, those were elusive, slim, golden shadows of the Arizona forest. This was larger, broader. A young male with the beginnings of a dark mane, his amber eyes fixed on them with an unsettling intensity. His breath fogged the glass, his whiskers trembling as he leaned forward. Laura's entire body locked, fear slicing through her like ice. Daniel instinctively stepped in front of her, though he had no weapon, no plan, only a desperate instinct to protect. The lion didn't growl. It didn't paw at the door in aggression. Instead, it lifted one massive paw and tapped gently against the glass. Once, twice, 3 times. The exact pattern they'd heard before, turning on the lights. Daniel whispered, That's impossible." Laura couldn't speak. Her mind raced back to the moment she'd found Evan's basketball abandoned in the backyard, the small footprints leading toward the tree line, and the awful silence that followed. She had imagined every terrible possibility. Coyotes, cliffs, strangers, the freezing night wind. But never this. Never a lion knocking like a visitor standing on their porch. The lion took a step back, still watching them. Something about its posture felt unnatural, not wild, not curious, but purposeful. It turned its head toward the forest, then looked back at them again. Laura felt a tug inside her chest, a pull she didn't understand but couldn't ignore. Suddenly, headlights swept across the yard. A car slowed near their driveway. Their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Kincaid, rolled down her window and called out shakily, "Is everything all right over there? I thought I saw—" She trailed off, her voice trembling as she spotted the massive shape on the porch. The lion didn't react to her voice at all. It was focused solely on the Harpers. Laura motioned for Mrs. Kincaid to stay back. When she turned again, the lion lowered its head slightly, almost like a bow, then took several steps toward the edge of the yard. It paused, glanced over its shoulder, and locked eyes with her. Not with fear, not with hunger, with expectation. Daniel whispered, "It wants us to follow it. Don't say you don't see that." Laura did see it. She felt it. Every atom in her body recognized something in the lion's gaze, an urgency she couldn't explain. She stepped closer to the glass, heart hammering, as memories flickered through her exhausted mind. Evan's laughter echoing through the yard, his small hand slipping into hers, his bright red scarf with the stitched letter E. The scarf he'd been holding the day he disappeared. She swallowed hard. Daniel, what if it knows something? Daniel shook his head. Laura, lions they don't do this. This isn't a fairy tale. His voice cracked on the last word. The lion tapped the glass again, softer this time, as if to insist. Mrs. Kincaid called from her car. Should I phone emergency services? Laura didn't answer. She couldn't. Her entire world had narrowed to the golden eyes staring at her through the glass. In those eyes she saw no malice, no threat, only an urgency so human-like it made her chest ache. The lion took a final step toward the tree line. Then it stopped, lifted its head to the sky, and released a sound not quite a roar, not quite a call. Something between the two, low, resonant, almost like a warning, or an invitation. Laura whispered, It's trying to lead us somewhere. Daniel exhaled shakily, torn between terror and the desperate hope that had been slowly dying inside him over the last 4 days. If we go out there and something happens, something already happened, Laura said softly. Our son is missing. Her voice trembled. If there's even a chance, any chance. The lion stared at them a moment longer, then walked into the darkness, its tawny shape swallowed by the forest. Laura pressed her palm to the glass, her voice barely audible. Evan, please let this be you reaching out. Behind her, Daniel stood frozen. Outside, the night grew still again. But the memory of the lion's tapping lingered in the quiet, like a message they could not ignore. The morning after the lion's tapping, the sunlight falling over the Harper backyard felt painfully ordinary. Too gentle, too bright for a family drowning in fear. Laura stood at the back door, staring toward the vast tree line where Evan had vanished 4 days earlier. The same patch of forest she once considered peaceful now felt like a place that could swallow anything whole. She touched the glass door where the lion's paw had tapped hours before, the faint smudges still visible. Her heart clenched at the thought that a wild animal had come closer to giving her answers than the dozens of trained rescuers searching day and night. Behind her, Daniel flipped through the worn search map on the kitchen table, tracing the same trails he'd memorized by heart. The sheriff's team had already checked every marked route, ravine, and creek bed. K9 teams had tracked Evan's scent nearly half a mile before it faded near a dried wash. For 3 nights straight, temperatures had dropped near freezing. Even the sheriff couldn't hide the grim math of survival. It reminded Laura of the cold way insurance forms list risk factors, reducing tragedy to numbers. She hated numbers now. Numbers didn't bring children home. She closed her eyes and let her thoughts return to the moment it all began, 4 long days earlier. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon. Evan and his best friend Maddie had been kicking a bright green soccer ball around the lawn. Laura remembered their shrieks of laughter, the way Evan's loose red scarf fluttered behind him as he ran. Maddie was the last person to see him. The little girl told the search team she heard a low rumbling sound like a growl, but not scary, coming from the tree line. Evan, always curious, always too brave for his age, had said, I think it's just a big cat. I want to see. Before Maddie could stop him, he slipped through the back gate and disappeared among the pines. Laura had stepped inside only for a short phone call, a conversation about work deadlines and billing schedules she could not care less about now. 10 minutes. 10 minutes that stretched into a nightmare. When she returned, the yard was silent. The back gate stood open, the ball resting against the fence, as if waiting for someone who was never coming back. She called his name until her throat burned, stumbling barefoot into the forest, until Daniel found her shaking and empty-handed. Search teams flooded the neighborhood within hours. Volunteers spread out in lines, scanning every brush and ditch. Maddie, terrified she had done something wrong, cried in her mother's arms and repeated the same detail. He wasn't scared. He just said he heard something calling him. The deputies chalked it up to a child's imagination. But Laura never forgot the seriousness in Maddie's voice. On the second night of searching, a deputy mentioned finding large paw prints near the path, mountain lion tracks. They tried to downplay it, insisting the prints weren't fresh. But the rumor spread through the town anyway. By the third night, people whispered that a lion must have taken the boy. Laura refused to believe it. She refused to believe anything that ended with Evan gone forever. Now, staring into the tall, dark pines, she remembered how the search captain had looked at her that afternoon when he quietly said, "We're pulling the helicopters back. There's nothing new to go on." She had nodded numbly, but inside, something hollow cracked deeper. She thought of every news story she had ever seen about missing hikers, every tragedy weighted with phrases like "search suspended," "limited resources," "no further leads," words that sounded like death sentences. But last night changed everything. Daniel joined her at the door, rubbing a hand over his tired face. "I still can't believe what we saw," he whispered. "A lion. Here. Acting like—" He shook his head. "Acting like it wants to be our guide." Laura whispered, "What if it knows where Evan is?" Daniel exhaled slowly. "Or what happened to him?" The words stung, but she didn't look away. "It came 3 nights in a row, Daniel. And last night, it wasn't random. That thing was waiting for us. It was trying to show us something." Before Daniel could answer, there was a soft knock at the front door. When he opened it, small arms wrapped around Laura's waist. Maddie stood there, eyes red but determined, clutching a folded piece of paper. Her mother hovered behind her on the porch, looking apologetic. "Maddie said she had to show you something," the woman murmured. Maddie sniffed, then opened her hand. Inside was a crumpled drawing. Evan's drawing. A lion, sketched clumsily in bright crayon, standing on a hill under a sun shaped like a giant coin. Evan had drawn it just a week before he disappeared. He had taped it to the fridge until it fell off during dinner. Maddie whispered, "He told me. He said the lion was special. He said it looked like it was watching him from far away." A chill rippled through Laura's shoulders. "When did he say that?" "The day before he got lost," Maddie whispered. Daniel stared at the drawing, his voice low. "Laura, that's the same shape, the same face, the same main color, the same lion." Laura felt the truth settling over her. Not comforting, not frightening, but undeniable. Evan had felt something before he vanished, and the lion had come for them with purpose. She crouched to Maddie's level. "Sweetheart, when Evan heard that sound in the forest, the growling sound, did he look scared?" Maddie shook her head. "No. He looked like he already knew what it was." The words hit Laura like a heartbeat in the dark. As Maddie and her mother walked back home, Daniel closed the door and leaned against it, his voice strained. "All right, I'm done pretending this is coincidence. That drawing, the timing, the tapping." He looked at Laura with exhausted conviction. "Whatever that lion wants, we need to find out." Laura nodded. "Tonight, if it comes back, we follow it." Daniel stared at her, fear and fragile hope mixing in his eyes. "Laura, that's dangerous, insanely dangerous. So is doing nothing." He didn't argue, because there was nothing left to argue. They were running out of time, out of logic, out of hope. But something primal inside them both said the lion wasn't the threat. The lion was the message. That night, as the sun dipped behind the mountains and shadows swallowed the yard, Laura stood at the glass door again. She pressed her palm to the cool surface, her heartbeat loud in her ears. Evan had always believed the world was bigger than what people could see. He said the forest had secrets, that some animals understood things humans couldn't. She used to smile at his imagination. Now she prayed he was right. In the distance, a branch snapped. Then came the soft, rhythmic tapping against the glass, 3 measured knocks that made the hair on Laura's arms rise. The lion had returned. The lion returned just after nightfall, its silhouette emerging from the tree line, like a memory Laura wished she understood. The tapping on the glass came again, 3 slow, deliberate knocks that echoed through the quiet house. Laura and Daniel reached the living room almost at the same time, their breath catching as the massive animal stepped into the light spilling from the window. Its amber eyes reflected the glow like twin embers, steady and unafraid. For a moment, no one moved. It was as if the world held its breath, waiting for the Harpers to decide whether fear or hope would guide them next. Then the lion bent down, nudging something forward with the side of its jaw. A small, bright flash of red landed just inches from the door, its color unmistakable even in the dim porch light. Laura gasped, swallowing a sob as she pressed her trembling hand against the glass. It was Evan's scarf, his little red scarf stitched with a crooked letter E her mother had made last Christmas. There was no dirt on it, no tears, no sign it had been dragged. It looked placed, delivered, purposefully returned. Daniel stepped closer, his voice breaking. That's his. Laura, that's really his. He grabbed the flashlight from the shelf and flicked it on, his hand shaking as the beam caught the lion's face. The animal didn't flinch. It simply sat back on its haunches, calm and focused, as if waiting for them to understand the meaning behind its strange delivery. Laura felt her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. "This isn't an accident," she whispered. It's bringing things back. It wants us to see something." The idea sounded impossible, ridiculous, something no insurance agent or police report would ever take seriously. But the sight of that scarf made the impossible feel like the only truth that mattered. Daniel crouched near the glass, staring at the scarf as though it might vanish if he blinked. "If this came from where Evan is," he said softly, "it means he's alive. It means he—" He stopped, unable to finish the sentence. The lion rose gracefully and took a few steps back, watching them with an expression Laura could only describe as expectant. When it turned toward the trees again, it paused, glancing over its shoulder with deliberate slowness. The message was clear: follow me. But they couldn't, not yet, not without a plan, not without daylight. And the lion seemed to understand that. It didn't growl or push, didn't paw or pace. It simply waited for a few long seconds before slipping quietly back into the forest, leaving the red scarf behind like a breadcrumb in a dark fairy tale. Laura unlocked the door with trembling fingers. Daniel protested weakly, but she shook her head. "Just the scarf," she said, stepping out slowly. The cold night air bit at her skin as she knelt to pick it up. The familiar yarn felt warm from the porch light, soft with the faint scent of pine, and something else, something she couldn't name. She held it to her chest, tears running freely down her cheeks. "Oh, Evan, you're out there. I know you're out there." Back inside, she laid the scarf carefully across the kitchen table, smoothing the edges as if afraid it would crumble under her touch. Daniel stared at Datoed as though it were a miracle. "We need to tell the sheriff," he said, though his tone lacked conviction. He knew what she was thinking. The sheriff would never believe a lion delivered the scarf. They barely believed the lion tapping the door story the first time. Reporting this could risk losing their only lead. Before they could discuss it further, headlights swept into the driveway again. This time, it was Maddie's parents, walking quickly toward the door with worry etched across their faces. Maddie rushed inside, clutching her small flashlight shaped like a dolphin. "Mrs. Harper," she said urgently, "did it come back? The lion? I saw something from my window." Laura gently pulled the girl into a hug. "Yes, sweetheart. It came back." Maddie's eyes widened when she saw the red scarf on the table. "That's Evan's. He always wore that." Her voice cracked. "Does that mean he's okay?" Laura knelt in front of her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I think he's alive. And I think the lion is trying to help us find him." Maddie hesitated, then whispered something that made the room go still. "Evan said the lion liked him. He said it wasn't scary." She glanced nervously at her parents. "He told me that before he disappeared." Daniel straightened slowly, a chill spreading across his back. How would he know that? Maddie looked at the floor. "He saw it before. In the yard. But he didn't want you to worry." Laura exchanged a look with Daniel, fear, disbelief, and a spark of understanding flickering between them. The lion had been around before the disappearance, watching, waiting, maybe protecting. After Maddie and her family left, Laura and Daniel sat in silence. The red scarf lay between them like a burning truth. Daniel finally broke the quiet. "We follow it," he said simply. "Next time it comes, we follow it." Laura nodded, wiping her cheeks. "We have to." She tucked the scarf gently into her jacket pocket, the fabric warm against her heart. She felt for the first time in days a shift inside her, a fragile light cutting through the suffocating fear. A hope stronger than any policy, stronger than the cold statistics she'd been forced to accept. That night she slept lightly, listening for the tapping, listening for the strange messenger that had carried a piece of her son home. Just before dawn, the familiar knocks echoed through the house once more, soft, steady, and unmistakable. The lion had returned to deliver its next message. The lion waited for them at the tree line like a silent guardian carved out of the night. Its golden body blended almost perfectly with the shadows, but its eyes gleamed like coals, steady and patient. Laura gripped her flashlight with trembling fingers, the beam shaking slightly as she pointed it toward the massive cat. Daniel stood beside her, his breath fogging in the cold air, a canister of bear spray clipped to his belt. He wasn't sure it would make any difference if things went wrong. The lion didn't move until they stepped off the porch. Then, with a slow, deliberate turn of its head, it began walking deeper into the woods, never too fast, always staying within 30 feet ahead. Each step felt unreal, like walking into a story they had never intended to be part of. Laura felt her heart hammering in her chest, but not from fear alone. Beneath everything, there was something else, a pull, as if she had walked this path in a dream long before now. The forest swallowed them quickly, the light from the house fading until it became nothing more than a memory between the trees. The air grew colder, damp with pine and earth, each breath filling Laura's lungs with the scent of moss and fallen needles. She had grown up around these woods, yet tonight they felt different, older, deeper, as if hiding a history she had never been meant to see. Daniel stopped when they reached a thick grove. "Laura," he whispered, Are we really doing this? His voice betrayed the fear he tried to hide, the kind of fear that made a man question every step forward. This thing could turn on us at any second. Laura looked ahead at the lion, which had paused and turned back toward them. Its gaze was unwavering, almost urging. "We don't have a choice," she said softly. "Evan is out here, and this lion, it wants to help us find him." She felt foolish saying it aloud, but the truth in her voice was undeniable. Suddenly, a flashlight beam cut through the dark behind them. "Hey, Harper, stop walking toward the damn lion!" Both parents turned sharply. A young man in a forest ranger coat jogged toward them, breathless and frustrated. It was Theo Rivers, the newest ranger assigned to the San Francisco Peaks region. He had visited their house the day before to update them on the official search grid. He was earnest, serious, and deeply protective of these woods. Now he looked downright alarmed. "What are you two doing?" Theo hissed urgently. "This is insane. You can't—" His words died mid-sentence as he spotted the lion. The animal stood calmly, watching them with an almost regal patience. "Oh my God," he breathed. "You weren't kidding. It really has been coming to your house." Daniel raised his hands slightly. "Theo, we need to follow it. It brought us Evan's scarf." Theo's jaw dropped. "A lion brought you evidence? No way. This isn't normal behavior. This is dangerous." His voice trembled, torn between duty and disbelief. "You folks need to come back with me before this thing decides you're prey." But the lion didn't behave like a predator. It simply waited. Its tail flicked once, slow and controlled. Then it turned and walked deeper into the woods. Laura didn't hesitate. She stepped forward. "Laura!" Theo grabbed her arm. She looked him straight in the eyes. "My son is out here," she said. "That lion knows where he is. If you want to help us, come with us, but don't try to stop me." Theo hesitated. Then, with a resigned breath, he nodded. "Fine, but I'm not letting either of you out of my sight." He pulled his radio from his belt, switching it on. Static crackled, then silence. "No signal. Figures," he muttered. "Just stay close." The farther they walked, the more strange the forest became. Markings appeared on the trees, claw-carved symbols that resembled a curved "wah," repeated again and again. They were too deliberate to be random. Laura paused at one of the marks, running her fingers over the grooves. The cuts were deep, even, unmistakably intentional. Theo stepped beside her, his brows furrowed. "I've never seen these before," he murmured. "Not animal territory marks. Something else." Daniel swallowed. "What do you think it means?" Theo shook his head. "I don't know, but someone carved these, or something did." The lion stopped near a fallen tree, its head turning toward a narrow slope ahead. The forest opened into a rocky incline, one Laura didn't recognize from any hiking trail. "This area isn't on the maps," Theo whispered. "There shouldn't be anything past here except cliffs." Yet the lion climbed with ease, its paws silent even on the loose stones. Laura followed, her breaths coming quicker as the path steepened. The flashlight beam bounced across moss-covered rocks, and she stumbled more than once, grabbing Daniel's arm for balance. The night pressed in around them, thick and heavy. She could feel her heartbeat echoing in her ears, accompanied by a rising dread, one she couldn't shake. Halfway up the slope, they found something that made all three of them stop cold. There, half buried in pine needles, was a small toy compass, scratched, dirt-stained, and unmistakably familiar. Laura fell to her knees. "This is Evan's," she whispered. "He keeps it in his jacket pocket. He never goes into the woods without it." Theo crouched down, examining it with wide eyes. "This wasn't here earlier today," he said. "I swept this whole section at noon." Daniel's voice cracked. "He was here. Recently." The lion let out a low, soft rumble, almost like encouragement. Then it continued upward. Laura followed without hesitation now, driven by a force stronger than fear. Each step felt like walking deeper into the truth, like crossing the boundary between what she believed and what she feared. The forest grew darker, but she no longer needed the flashlight to know where to go. She felt it, an instinct pulling her forward, guiding her with a certainty she didn't understand. At the top of the incline, the trees parted, revealing a narrow plateau. The lion stood at its center, looking back at them with an expression that seemed almost human, an urgency she could feel in her bones. Before she could speak, the lion padded toward the far edge of the plateau, stopping near a cluster of boulders. With a slow tilt of its head, it revealed something hidden behind them. A path. A narrow, winding trail descending between two walls of rock, completely invisible unless one stood exactly where the lion stood. Laura stared, breathless. It's been guiding us to this. Theo exhaled shakily. This trail isn't on any ranger map. It shouldn't exist. Daniel whispered, "What's down there?" The lion stepped aside, as if offering them the choice to find out for themselves. Laura tightened her grip on the flashlight. Her heart pounded, throbbing with fear, hope, and something deeper, a certainty she hadn't felt since Evan vanished. "We go down," she said. Daniel nodded. Theo swallowed hard. "All right, but stay behind me. I don't like how narrow that is. If something happens, if there's a fall risk or medical emergency." His words faded as the lion released a low, deep sound from its chest, something not threatening but commanding, like a signal telling them there was no time to waste. Laura took her first step onto the hidden trail. The lion followed them silently from behind, its presence steady, like a living shadow guiding them into the unknown. And for the first time since Evan disappeared, Laura felt certain of one thing. Whatever waited below, it was part of a story far older than she ever imagined. The hidden trail wound downward in a narrow, twisting descent, the walls of stone rising like ancient sentinels on either side. Laura felt the temperature drop as they moved deeper, the air turning still and cool like the inside of a forgotten cellar. Pine needles softened each step, muffling their footsteps until only the steady crunch of gravel beneath Daniel's boots broke the silence. Behind them, the lion moved with impossible grace, its paws silent on the uneven ground. Theo kept glancing back at it, his grip tight on his flashlight, his voice barely above a whisper as he muttered to himself, This isn't how wildlife behaves, not even close." Laura understood his fear, but her own terror had shifted into something sharper, a focused urgency that felt almost like instinct. She didn't know why, but she trusted the lion more than the empty promises of search grids and rescue maps. She trusted it because Evan's scarf had come from its mouth, because the compass had been left where only she would find it, because something in its eyes reminded her of a truth she couldn't yet name. The rock walls gradually opened into a plateau, moonlit and strangely quiet. At first, Laura thought the darkness ahead was just more forest, until her flashlight caught the straight edge of something unnatural, something built, a structure tucked between the cliffs so cleverly that anyone passing above would mistake it for shadows. A cabin, if it could even be called that. The building seemed older than the trees surrounding it, made of weathered timber reinforced with stone, its roof half hidden under a thick blanket of moss. Vines curled around the windowsills like grasping fingers. A wooden door hung slightly crooked, as if it had been opened and closed more times than anyone could count. The whole place had the eerie stillness of a secret that had waited decades to be discovered. Theo exhaled sharply. This isn't on any ranger record, no permit, no documentation. It shouldn't even exist on federal land. His voice wavered with a mix of disbelief and concern. Someone built this to be hidden. The lion stopped at the cabin's threshold and sat, its tail curling neatly around its paws. It looked at Laura, not past her, not at the men beside her, but at her specifically, as though presenting the discovery to her alone. Laura's pulse raced. She stepped forward. Daniel grabbed her arm. "Hold on. We don't know what's inside." "I know," she whispered. But Evan was here. She felt it in her bones, an unexplainable certainty, like a thread tugging gently at her heart. Theo moved ahead cautiously. "Let me check first. If someone's inside, I want to handle it." His voice carried the tone of someone who had been trained for dangerous situations, but had walked into something far beyond protocol. He pushed the door slowly, and it creaked open with a long, aching groan. The flashlight beam swept across the interior, revealing dust motes suspended in the cold air. Wooden shelves lined the walls, cluttered with old tin boxes, a cracked lantern, and jars filled with herbs long since dried. A stone stove sat crooked in one corner, and a cot lay pushed against the wall. The room smelled faintly of pine resin and smoke, but also something else, something recent. Laura entered behind Theo, her breath catching as her light landed on a small table near the fireplace. On it lay a child's jacket, blue with gray sleeves, a little frayed at the collar from constant wear. Evan's jacket. Laura rushed forward, her hand shaking as she lifted it. Dirt clung to the fabric, but it was unmistakably his. The weight of it nearly brought her to her knees. Oh God, he was here. He was actually here. Her voice cracked into a choked sob. Daniel's face went pale. He touched the jacket as if afraid it would vanish. "This is real," he whispered. "He's close. He has to be." Theo glanced around, uneasy. If Evan was here, someone else must have been with him. Kids don't patch wounds or make campfires alone. He pointed his flashlight toward the corner where a small metal pot still held the faint scent of heated broth. This was used today. Laura turned slowly, scanning the room. Her light landed on a cluster of papers pinned haphazardly to the wall. A map drawn by hand, lines and markings that didn't match any official chart. Paths wound through the mountains like veins, some ending in symbols resembling the same claw-marked ore they had seen on the trees. Her voice trembled. "Whoever lives here, they've mapped the forest in ways we've never seen." Theo frowned. "And those symbols, why mark those areas? Are they territorial boundaries? Warning signs?" He stepped closer, tracing one symbol lightly with his gloved finger. Someone has been tracking something, maybe lions, maybe people. Laura's flashlight beam drifted to the fireplace where a stack of old photographs sat in a box. She pulled the top one free, wiping away dust. Her breath stopped. The photograph showed a young man standing beside a lion, not a mountain lion, but one identical to the creature outside. The same brawny build, the same striking eyes, even the same faint split in the whisker line near its nose. The man in the picture looked familiar, too familiar. His jawline, his eyes, the curve of his mouth. Daniel leaned in, startled. "Laura, he looks like you." No, he looked like her mother. Before she could process that, the wind outside let out a sound, not a roar, but a soft, low rumble that vibrated through the wooden walls. A warning, or a summons. Theo stiffened. "Someone's coming," he whispered. Laura felt her heartbeat thunder in her ears. Footsteps approached, slow, heavy, deliberate. Not animal, human. The lion moved aside from the doorway as if making room. Then a shadow stretched across the threshold, tall and unmistakably human. A man stepped into the cabin, lit only by the wavering flashlight beams. His face was obscured for a moment, but when he looked up, Laura felt the ground tilt beneath her, because the man standing before them had her mother's eyes. And behind him, deeper in the darkness, another set of footsteps echoed softly, smaller, hesitant, a child's footsteps. The man stepped fully into the cabin, his boots crunching softly against the grit on the wooden floor. The lion outside lowered its head respectfully, as if acknowledging a higher presence. Laura stood frozen, clutching Evan's jacket to her chest. Daniel moved instinctively in front of her, and Theo raised his flashlight like a shield, but the stranger didn't flinch beneath the harsh beam. Instead, he lifted one hand in a slow, peaceful gesture. "It's all right," he said, his voice low and steady, weathered, but warm in a way that sent a strange tremor through Laura's chest. "No one here will harm you." The dim lantern light revealed a man in his early 60s, his hair silver at the temples, his face lined from years in the sun. But it was his eyes, deep-set, sharp, unmistakably familiar, that made Laura's breath catch. The same smoky gray color her mother carried her entire life. The same quiet intensity. "Who are ye?" Daniel demanded. "Did you take our son?" The man's expression tightened, not with guilt, but with something like heartbreak. "No, I helped save him." Theo barked. "From what?" The stranger's gaze slid to the lion, still waiting at the door. "From the forest," he replied softly. "From a fall that could have ended his life, and from things far older than this place." Before any of them could speak again, another figure stepped hesitantly into view, a young woman with dark braids and a weathered first aid kit slung across her shoulder. She looked about 30, her posture calm but alert. "This is Mara," the man said. "She's the one who bandaged your boy." Laura's knees wavered. "Where is he? Where is Evan?" "He's safe," Mara assured her quickly. "Resting. His ankle was swollen, but we tended it. He was frightened at first, but he understood we meant no harm." "Take us to him," Daniel said fiercely. "You will see him," the man promised, "but you need to understand who we are first, why you're here." Theo stepped forward, bristling. "Hold on. Nobody goes anywhere until I know what kind of operation this is. You're on federal land, living off-grid, keeping a missing child?" His voice rose. "That's unlawful confinement. I can call in every ranger and deputy within 50 miles. "No," the man said gently, almost sadly. "You can't." Theo's hand tightened on his radio, but the man continued. "Your signal hasn't worked since. You crossed the ridge. This place is older than any tower, older than the laws you're quoting." A chill ran through the room. Daniel swallowed hard. "Who are you?" The man turned his gaze to Laura, speaking to her, and her alone. "My name is Elias Crow." The name hit her like a punch. Laura staggered back. "Crow. My mother's maiden name was Crow." "I know," he whispered. "Patricia was my daughter." Silence crashed into the cabin. Daniel stared at him as if trying to make sense of the impossible. Theo looked between them, his confusion deepening. But Laura, she felt the world tilt beneath her feet. "You're lying," she breathed. "My grandfather died before I was born." "No," Elias said quietly. "Your grandmother told you that. She wanted you raised away from this life, away from me, away from the forest." He stepped closer, his expression raw with something she could not define. "But you carry the bloodline, the bond. The Leuant came to you because you can hear what others cannot." Theo scoffed. "Bond? Bloodline? What is this, some kind of cult?" Elias didn't turn toward him. Instead, he looked at the lion outside, who seemed to understand every word. "We are the keepers of the rim," he said. Families who chose to protect the forest generations ago when mining companies, developers, and outsiders began tearing through the land. He gestured gently toward the lion. We protect the ones who protect the balance, lions like Asher. The name seemed to vibrate through the cabin. Asher, the lion that tapped at their glass door, the lion that tracked Evan, the lion that led them here. Daniel shook his head in disbelief. You're telling me this lion is working with you? No, Elias corrected. Not with us. With you. With Laura. With Evan. The same way his father once worked with Patricia. Laura felt every beat of her heart in her throat. My mother she never talked about anything like this. She couldn't, Elias replied softly. The life here is dangerous. The forest takes and gives in ways most people cannot understand. His voice trembled. She wanted you safe, so she left. And in doing so, she left me too. Laura's eyes burned. Part anger, part grief she didn't know she had. And part something she could not name, something ancient and familiar. Theo had heard enough. All right, this is insane. I'm taking everyone, and that includes the kid, out of here. You're coming with us to answer questions. The lion released a low, warning growl. Elias lifted one hand. The lion instantly went silent. It was not fear, it was respect. Laura's breath trembled. My son, she pressed. Evan, please, I need to see him. Elias nodded. You will, but there's something you need to understand first. He pointed toward the omega-shaped symbol carved into one of the cabin beams. This mark, your son followed it. That's why he entered the forest. It called to him, just like it once called to your mother and to you. Daniel stiffened. What do you mean, called to him? Elias met their eyes with a steady, sorrowful weight. Because your boy, Evan, carries the same gift, the same connection, and Asher recognized it immediately. Laura felt her knees weaken. The room blurred for a moment, her pulse racing. She clutched Evan's jacket tighter. Mara stepped forward, her voice gentle. Please, let us take you to him. You've waited long enough. Outside, Asher stood and turned toward a shadowed path, deeper between the cliffs, waiting once more, this time not as a messenger, but as a guardian guiding them to the truth. And as Laura stepped forward, following the lion into the dark, she felt the impossible weight of Elias's final words before the trail swallowed his figure behind them. Evan wasn't taken by the forest, he said softly. The forest chose him. The narrow passage behind the cabin sloped downward into a ravine where moonlight barely touched the earth. Laura followed close behind the lion, her heart thundering with every step. Daniel stayed at her side, one hand hovering protectively near her back, while Theo trailed just behind them, his flashlight trembling slightly as he swept the path ahead. Mara guided them with calm certainty, her quiet footsteps steady and confident, as though she'd walked this hidden trail thousands of times. The deeper they moved into the ravine, the thicker the air became, dense with pine, cold earth, and something older than the forest itself. The silence was heavy, broken only by the soft pads of the lion's paws and Laura's uneven breaths. Every few steps, she touched Evan's jacket tucked under her arm, grounding herself with the familiar weight. Her son was close. She could feel it like a tether tightening around her heart. As they rounded a bend, the path widened into a small clearing, surrounded by high walls of rock draped in tangled vines. In the center sat a simple canvas tent, its entrance glowing faintly from a lantern inside. Smoke curled from a makeshift fire ring, still warm though no flames burned. Laura froze. She didn't dare breathe. She didn't dare blink. "Asher brought him here," Mara whispered gently. "This spot stays warm even in winter. The cliffs shield it from the wind." Daniel's grip tightened around Laura's hand. "Is he inside?" Before Mara could answer, a small shadow moved behind the tent flap, a soft rustle, the unmistakable shuffle of a child's foot on dirt, and then a voice, small, tired, but achingly familiar. "Mom!" Laura's heart shattered. She ran. The tent flap flew open and Evan stumbled out, his arms lifting instinctively. She caught him mid-stride, pulling him into her chest with a sob so deep it almost dropped her to her knees. His hair smelled like pine smoke and earth. His cheek was warm against hers. He was real. He was alive. "Evan, oh, sweetheart, you're here. You're here." She could barely speak through the flood of relief. Daniel wrapped his arms around both of them, his shoulders shaking silently as he pressed his face against Evan's tangled hair. Evan held on with all the strength his small body could muster. "Mom, Dad, I got lost. I fell. My foot hurt. But the lion wouldn't leave." He turned his head, eyes shining with awe. "He slept right next to me. He kept the coyotes away. He's not scary. He's my friend." The lion, Asher, stood a few feet away, watching with those amber eyes that now seemed gentler, almost protective. He dipped his head slightly, like a silent acknowledgement that his task had been fulfilled. Theo exhaled shakily behind them. "This is unreal," he murmured. He stepped closer, his voice thick with a relief he tried to hide. "Kid, you just scared the whole damn county. You know that?" Evan blinked at him. "I didn't mean to." Daniel laughed through his tears, pulling his son closer. "It's all right, buddy. You're safe now." Mara crouched beside them. "His ankle is healing well. Just a sprain. He needs rest, warmth, and some proper food. But he's strong. Stronger than he knows." Laura brushed dirt from Evan's cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for everything. You saved him." Mara shook her head. "Elias saved him, and Asher found him first." She placed a comforting hand on Laura's arm. "Your boy was meant to make it. The forest didn't want to lose him." As they stood together, the cliffs around them rumbled faintly, a shifting echo that vibrated through the ground. The lion stiffened. His ears flicked. Then he released a low, deep growl that resonated through the clearing like a warning carried on the bones of the earth. Theo snapped his flashlight up. What was that? Elias appeared from the shadows behind them, calm but watchful. "The forest moves," he said. "It reacts to change. And your arrival here is more change than this place has felt in decades." Theo stepped forward defensively. "Elias, we're getting this family out of here, now." Elias met his gaze steadily. "You will, but not before understanding what your arrival has awakened." Laura held Evan tighter. "What does that mean?" Elias approached slowly, stopping near the lion. Asher leaned into him like a loyal guardian, and Elias rested a hand on the animal's mane. There are parts of this land where old agreements still matter. Places bound by people who once vowed to protect the balance here, people connected not by law or insurance policies or government paperwork, but by blood. Your family is part of that lineage, Laura. Daniel stiffened. "Our son nearly died, and the forest saved him," Elias said softly. "Asher saved him because he recognized something in Evan, something he recognized in you the moment he saw you at the window." Laura swallowed hard. "You keep saying that. Recognized what?" "The bond," Elias said. "The one your mother carried, the one she passed to you, even though she tried to bury it. And now," he looked gently at Evan, "oh, your son carries it too." The clearing grew unnaturally quiet. Laura felt a chill spread along her spine, not fear, but the unsettling certainty that the world she knew had just grown larger, deeper, and far more mysterious than she ever imagined. Theo shook his head, refusing the explanation. This sounds like superstition, not science. Call it what you like, Elias replied, but Asher answered a call you can't hear. And so did your boy. He nodded toward the cliffs. Come. There's something you need to see before we leave this place. Asher stepped toward the shadowed passage that led deeper between the rocks. Evan reached for his mother's hand. Mom, I'm not scared, he whispered. He's been with me the whole time. Laura looked from her son to the lion, her breath unsteady. Okay, she whispered. We follow. Daniel nodded, placing a protective hand on Evan's small back. Theo hesitated, torn between duty and the undeniable truth unfolding before him, then followed with a tense sigh. As they walked behind Elias and the lion, Evan glanced up at his mother. Mom, he whispered softly, I think Asher wants to show us where he found me. Before she could answer, the night split with a sudden, thunderous roar, deep enough to vibrate through the stone, powerful enough to freeze their steps mid-stride. But it wasn't Asher. It came from somewhere further inside the cliffs. Elias didn't turn around. Do not be afraid, he said. This is the last secret the forest wants you to know. And with that, he led them toward the darkness that waited ahead, toward the truth they never expected to face. The roar that echoed through the cliffs seemed to vibrate through Laura's bones, ancient and commanding, yet not hostile. Evan clutched her hand, but there was no fear in his eyes, only recognition, as if some part of him understood the sound before his mind could place it. Asher stood tall, ears forward, his body relaxed rather than threatened. Even Theo, usually quick to react, hesitated in confusion rather than panic. Elias led them toward the source of the sound, his lantern casting shifting shadows along the narrow stone corridor. The walls glowed faintly with reflected moonlight, and Laura noticed the same claw-marked or symbols etched into the stone itself, older, deeper, carved with a precision that felt both purposeful and reverent. She ran her fingers along one mark and felt a faint hum beneath the rock, as though the earth itself remembered who had carved it. The passage widened into a circular alcove sheltered beneath an overhang of stone. In the center lay a shallow pool brimming with clear water, fed from a thin stream trickling down the cliffside. The air here was warmer, almost like a natural refuge. Another lion, a massive older male, rested on a smooth outcrop beside the pool, his mane silvered with age, his presence dignified and calm. He lifted his head when they entered, releasing another low rumble that resonated like the echo of the forest's heartbeat. Elias bowed his head slightly. "This is Kalen," he said quietly. "Asher's sire, protector of this ridge for nearly 2 decades. Theo stared, wide-eyed. 2 lions living together? That's not normal behavior. Mountain lions are— "These are not mountain lions," Elias interrupted gently. "Not in the way the world understands them. This line has survived longer than anyone believed possible. They bond with the land, with those who carry the old connection." He turned toward Laura. "And your family, Laura, is part of that connection." Laura felt her throat tighten, as if the truth itself were too large to swallow. "I don't understand." "You will," Elias said, "because Evan already does." Evan stepped forward, still holding his mother's hand, and looked directly at the older lion. Kalen lowered his head, almost in greeting, and Laura felt the breath leave her chest. Evan whispered, "This one, he was there when Asher found me. He didn't hurt me. He just watched." Daniel pulled Evan gently back. "We need to get out of here," he said firmly. "We have our son. That's what matters." Theo nodded, still shaken. "We have to report some of this. A child missing, an off-grid settlement, undisclosed wildlife. This stuff affects public safety, legal liability, even federal land policy." Elias lifted a hand. "And if you report what you saw here, every researcher, every developer, every thrill-seeker with a drone will flood these cliffs. This land will not survive that, nor will these lions." Laura tightened her hold on Evan. She felt the truth of Elias's words strike something deep within her, something instinctive, something she had felt the moment Asher tapped on the glass. "You want us to keep your secret," she said. "Not for me," Elias replied. "For the balance, for the forest that saved your son, and for the heritage you did not know you carried." He reached into the pocket of his worn coat and removed a smooth stone pendant, shaped like a lion's paw, with a hole worn clean through the center. He placed it gently into Laura's hand. The stone was warm, almost pulsing faintly. "If you leave this at the cabin's threshold," he said, "we will know you wish to return, not as strangers, but as part of what was built here generations ago." Laura looked down at the stone, her heart pounding. Daniel watched her, uncertainty etched across his face, yet he didn't take the pendant from her hand. Theo blew out a slow breath. "If this ever becomes a public case, I never saw this place. Understood?" He glanced at Evan. "The kid's safe. That's what matters." Elias nodded. "Thank you." They began the trek back up the hidden trail. Asher led them until the sky above opened again to the pale glow of dawn. At the ridge he stopped. His golden eyes met Laura's with a knowing softness. Then he bowed his head, just slightly, before turning and disappearing into the forest with Kaylin beside him, two shadows swallowed by the trees. By sunrise they reached the edge of the Harper property. The world looked ordinary again, birds waking, frost melting on the grass, the scent of pine drifting on the breeze. But Laura felt anything but ordinary. The sheriff, search teams, and neighbors swarmed the yard when they arrived, flooding them with questions. Laura and Daniel told the story Elias instructed them to tell. A hiker found Evan, tended to him briefly, then left before sharing their name. The sheriff frowned, but couldn't disprove it. The medical examiner confirmed Evan's ankle was treated with professional care. Reporters circulated, eager for a sensational ending, but the Harpers remained private, protecting what they had seen. Weeks passed. Life slowly returned to a fragile normal. Evan's laughter once again filled the backyard. Daniel returned to work. Laura tried to pretend the world hadn't changed beneath her feet. Yet every time she looked at the tree line, she felt something watching, not threatening, but protective. One evening near dusk, while Laura stood by the back window watering her plants, she noticed a movement near the garden. A small lion, its mane not yet formed, sat quietly at the edge of the yard. Not Asher. Not Kaylin. A juvenile, curious and unafraid, its tail flicking lazily in the grass. Laura stepped outside, her breath catching. The young lion looked at her for a long, still moment. Then it turned its head toward the forest, the same way Asher had the night he first tapped on their glass door. Evan appeared beside her. "Mom," he whispered. "Is that—" Laura rested her hand gently on his shoulder. "It's a friend," she said softly. "One of many." The lion stood, stretched, and melted back into the trees like a fading dream. The forest hushed behind it. Laura slipped her hand into her pocket and closed her fingers around the stone pendant. It was warm again. Daniel stepped onto the porch, watching her with quiet understanding. "Thinking about going back?" he asked. "Maybe someday," she replied, "but not today." The sun dipped behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the yard. Somewhere, deep within the woods, a lion called. Not a roar of warning, but a soft, resonant greeting. The forest remembered their names. And now, the Harpers would remember its. If this story touched your heart, drop a simple 1 in the comments. Just a single number. But it lets us know you're still here, still watching, still caring. And if you'd like to follow these journeys of courage, mystery, and the wild bonds we often forget, hit subscribe so you won't miss the next story waiting in the trees. Thank you for spending this time with us. We'll see you in the next chapter.